The king of kings. Chopper for the win.
Do you like green eggs and ham?
I do not like them, Chopper I am. I do not like green eggs and ham.
I make no apologies for that intro, guys. Okay, so green eggs and ham. What you're going to do is start by prepping your bamboo skewers, which you can either boil on the stove or place in a bowl of hot water, and you just bend them in a curve so they've got a bit of pressure on them. Take them out and they will stay bent. Just do a few to test which one's the best curve that you've got, and then you can start by prepping your board. I got some off-white fondant because I really want the eggs to pop off this cake. I don't want it to just blend in with a white background. So I've used a pizza stone here because I didn't have a cake board big enough. So I've just rolled out the fondant, placed that over the top. Then you're going to get a sculpting tool and gently carve down on the edges, which gives it a nice clean cut. If you go up or try and slide it along, it'll just tear. So do that downward motion and you'll get a nice straight edge. Smooth it off with your finger and you'll have a very nicely covered cake board. What you're going to do now is start by prepping your black fondant with some Tylose powder, and you're going to roll that through and knead it. When your fondant is no longer powdery, you can start rolling out your snake. Now I cut mine in the middle because I don't like the big thick ends. They seem to throw off the snake when I roll them. So I've trimmed that down to the desired thickness, and I wet my bamboo skewer with a paintbrush, measure out where it needs to be, cut it off, and then I pick it up and gently push it around because you can't thread it through because it's too thin. So you just push it around and then squeeze it at the back, and then you can use a sculpting tool or a paintbrush to smooth out the seam. And I've used the sculpting tool to taper down the bottom edge of the skewer where it goes into the cake. Now this is just the first part of your fork. With the offcuts, you're going to roll it out a little bit thinner, measure it up against the template for the desired length, and then you're going to roll out the ends to a fine point. If you measure it just right, you'll be able to get this two pieces out of the one bit you cut off. And as you can see, I'm constantly measuring it up against the template, then set it aside for it to dry because the Tylose powder takes about an hour for it to firm up. Because of the weight of the skewer in the handle, I wanted to get a bit of excess fondant and stick it in so the actual fork was standing up and not getting any flat edges on the back. Now I've broken off a little bit of white fondant for the handle. Don't forget to wrap your excess fondant in cling wrap so it doesn't dry out. Now I've just sort of roughly shaped what the handle looks like on the template. As you can see, I've gone for fairly close. This also has Tylose powder in it, so it sets quite firm. Now using some green fondant, I dyed all my fondant at once so I had the same green on the ham and the eggs. And to make those, I rolled a ball and cut it in half, then placed it on the bench and sort of patted it down and smoothed it out and put it aside to dry. I didn't use Tylose powder in these because I want them to stick together when I place the white on. Now for the egg whites itself, I just rolled a ball, smoothed it out and just pushed in the edges because I wanted to keep that nice round thing, but I kept the template close so I could measure and see if it looked the same. If you cut this out, it's going to leave like a really firm edge and be sort of sat. It's not going to bubble out of the side like I wanted it to. Repeating that process again, then you just place the green from earlier on top and you have your eggs. Let them sit aside with your fork pieces, and it's time to cut out your ham template. I've just used the one here. It's got the pattern on it, so try to keep that, don't chuck it out as soon as you've cut it. I've cut the 2 layers, and I originally do these on the same way as the template, but I just got caught up in filming and I cut them differently. So make sure you've got enough room for these extra bits that go at the top. So as long as you follow the template, you should be fine. Where you put it in the cake doesn't matter. But I did design it to be cut from the one template. So once you've got those pieces done, you place them on top and then you're going to start trimming it. As you see, I've tapered it down and used the little offcuts to fill the back piece in and just trimmed it off at the side there. Then at the front, you're going to concave that in a little bit. Don't go too much or you're going to have a fondant fold. You just want to give that appearance of it dipping in slightly so you don't need to go too far. Go around the edges and remove the bottom corners from underneath and around the sides to give it a rounded look. Then you're going to fill it with the flavoring of choice. I've used a bubblegum buttercream, and for a little bit of extra magic, I added some sprinkles. As you can see, I put quite a thin layer, then I put the sprinkles, then I put another layer of buttercream over the top of that. And these sprinkles should color the buttercream when it's inside it. It's going to look pretty cool when you cut it and bite into the cake. Same again to put on the top layer, put the sprinkles down, smooth that over, and then place on your pieces. Don't forget to glue them together. I have forgotten this in the past, and when you cut the cake, there's nothing to hold it, so it just falls apart. So that's a very important step. Now you're going to give it a generous crumb coat, going all the way over and smoothing this out. This is going to fill in any little gaps that you may have missed, and you can just go around and smooth it till it's nice and neat, ready for your green fondant. Refrigerating this for about 5-10 minutes beforehand is a good idea. It's going to help you get that nice smooth fondant. If you place it on and then you have to take it back off, the buttercream won't rip up as easy. Now, a good tip for fondant is not rolling it out too thin. That's a problem I see a lot of people do. They roll it too thin and it's almost impossible to smooth, and it's going to give you tears and really bad stuff. You can see at the front it went a little bit thin, so it's a bit bumpy. What I try to do is keep it about a pencil thickness, and that way when it's on, you're smoothing it down, it does thin out a little bit. Now, if you just place that over the top and remove all your excess, then you're going to push it all under using the sculpting tool to make it nice and neat around the edge. And I disguised a few of these little offcut marks with the black food dye for later. Using some of the excess, I buffed it out and made it nice and smooth around the edges. Then it's going to be time to take a spatula, lift that off very carefully and place that on your cake board of choice. And be mindful of where you want the eggs to sit as well. Using a little bit of water, I've glued the parts of the fork back on and then put that aside to dry. It was quite firm already at this stage. Then I used my mix of 2 parts liquid and 1 part gel food dye to paint on the fondant. Just follow the template's picture. It's fairly stock standard. You just a couple of little rings. Now, I forgot to put on the white bone, which I put on after the fact, and I didn't film it, and I was kicking myself. But it's such a small little dot of white fondant, it's, you know, anybody can add that in later. Following the template, and always, if you want to have a look at Google pictures, that's something I do a lot as well. I'll just look up a reference photo online and then just follow from there. You've got the main markings, which is quite easy to follow. Paint them on, take your time, get your lines nice, but the good thing about Dr. Seuss is he has quite cartoony animated lines, so really, even if you did a terrible job, it's going to look amazing because of the way it's drawn. Don't forget to put in some lines across the top to give it that depth when you look from the side. And then it's now time to place on your eggs, and using a thin brush, you're going to paint in the little, I guess it's shadowing. I'm not sure what these lines are or reflections, but it just fits with that Dr. Seuss style cartoon. Then you're going to paint the handle of your fork, which, because it's got a little shadowing on the bottom corner in the picture, I sort of had to do it around and make it, I just went by my own lines with this one. There's no set rule because it's a 3D object, not a 2D picture. Placing some lines on the cake board to give it that cartoony feel, and you're pretty much done. Pop your fork into the top of the ham, which I so cleverishly did off camera. But once that's done, there's your green eggs and ham cake. Thank you so much for watching this, guys. The Dr. Seuss fun doesn't stop there. Why not check out my Dr. Seuss inspired Converse, thanks to my best friend. If not, you could just watch the other cake selected, or check out the channel spotlight of these amazing creators who I believe in and think do a wonderful job. Show them some love, tell them Chop sent ya.